Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week we're reading the story of the call of Samuel in 1 Samuel 3, 1-21, in which the young boy Samuel at first confuses the call of God with the voice of his mentor, Eli the priest. We discuss the process through which faith becomes our own as we, like Samuel, learn to distinguish the voice of God from the voices of our predecessors in the faith. But such differentiation can at times lead to conflict, as it does for Samuel when he realizes that God is preparing to punish Eli for his failure to correct and discipline his own sons who have been harming the community of faith. And while we admire Samuel's comfortability sleeping in the presence of the Ark of the Covenant, we wonder whether it may be possible to feel too comfortable in God's presence, forgetting the gravity of the calling to which we have been called. Sometimes it may not be enough simply to be present. It is only when we say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," that everything begins to change. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it is Bible Worm time once again.
Hey, Bobby, how are ya?
I'm good. We are rolling our way through the Hebrew Bible, Amy. We were last time in Exodus 16 with the story of manna in the wilderness. This week, we're in a story that I remember fondly from my youth because we didn't read the whole thing. We're in 1 Samuel 3, 1-21, which is the call of the prophet Samuel when he was a young boy. There's a fair amount of territory between the manna in the wilderness and the call of Samuel. Meh. So I will not suggest that you need to give us all the detail of everything that happens between there. But can you set us in a framework that we might need to read this particular story?
Yeah, I'll try to put some ground under our feet for where we're starting today. Okay, so against all seeming odds, the Israelites make it through the wilderness. Or to be more specific, the Israelites that come out of Egypt, it's their children who make it out of the wilderness. There are lots of mistakes made in that generation, and the mistakes in God's estimation were just too grave for those people who came out of Egypt to actually be the ones to come into the promised land and start that new chapter. God never abandons them, but also says okay, we're going to have new people start the new chapter here. So at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, this new generation is coming into just about to come to the promised land. We get into the book of Joshua, and the promised land, that phrase sounds so dreamy and peaceful.
Yeah, it does.
But the beginnings of this chapter of the covenant story are not dreamy and peaceful. There is a lot of fighting, and there's a lot of war.
Yeah.
The people of Israel have no human king at this point, and this is by design. God is their king. But we start to come into this chapter of the story where this sort of series of kind of pop-up leaders that we see, especially in the book of Judges, doesn't seem to quite be enough.
Yeah.
The people this phrase keeps coming up. The people all did what was right in their own eyes, which I don't know. It seems like maybe that could work in theory, but it doesn't. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So by the end of the book of Judges, it ends with this incredibly violent and depraved act that is really a low point, I think, in human history.
Yeah.
And then we get to the book of 1 Samuel, where we're starting We're starting in chapter 3.
Yeah.
The book of 1 Samuel begins with the very famous story of Hannah, who is unable to have children for a long time during her life and offers this, and she really suffers quite a lot. And she prays, and she does eventually have children, actually. And one of her children she promises to the service of God in the temple. That's Samuel, the namesake of our book. The only other thing I want to tell you, because it will come up specifically in our chapter, is that the priest at that time is named Eli. He's sort of like the religious head of things. And Samuel is in his care because he's staying at the temple and helping out there. Eli has 2 sons who they're not doing what they ought to be doing, sort of ritually and morally. They are not the leaders that we want
They're
to sort of
stealing meat out of the people's pots that they're going to offer to the Lord. Like, they're doing some stuff.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to mention this in particular because, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of energy moving into this part of the story that sort of like the generation that is leading is not doing right. And so it has to be the next generation that's going to take over. And there is certainly some of that energy here too, because Eli, it's not like Eli tells him, good job, guys, and gives him a high five, but maybe he didn't do enough.
Yes.
However, they're the ones doing it. Right. So it's not sort of a straightforward, like down with the old, in with the younger generation. But there's some of that. And we're going to see some.
Yeah. I really appreciate that where you end right there, because it really is the case that Eli seems like he's kind of old and he's lost his sight a little bit, as we'll see. And he's not at the top of his game anymore, but he's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
He's been a good priest.
Good guy.
He met Hannah, and maybe we kind of critiqued him a little bit, but he got around and
he got there eventually.
Was a force for good.
Yeah.
But his sons are like wicked, according to the text. And it seems like his real issue, as you're saying, is that he's not willing to say what needs to be said. And so his problem is he's nice and he doesn't want to confront people who are violating the system, both the religious system and the social system. And so this is the story of kind of how that's gonna play out with him. Amy, the book of Samuel sits, and I think differently in the Jewish tradition and the Christian tradition in, I think, at least 2 ways. I'm curious what you'll say. One is very clear, which is in the Jewish canon, we go straight from Judges to Samuel. And so the last thing that has been said right before this is there was no king,
that's not how
and
the
the people
Christian
did.
canon goes.
The Christian canon inserts the book of Ruth in between, which the Jewish canon, has back in the Ketuvim at the end.
Yeah.
But the Christian canon in that section of prophets is organized by the historical chronology of the story that is being told. Not necessarily when it was written, but the story being told. And so because the book of Ruth takes place in the time of Judges and ends with a gesture toward David, between Judges and Samuel is where it goes. And so for a Christian reader, like, wait a second, what about Ruth? So it doesn't really affect too much here, I don't think, but it
that's
is true.
Fascinating. And I didn't know that, or maybe had forgotten it. In any case, it wasn't in my head. But that really does sort of, if you're reading chronologically through all the books in whatever version you're reading, when you're in the Jewish ordering of things, things are not great. And there really is still this open question about what are we going to do about the king situation, or what are we going to do about the leadership situation? What we're doing is not working, but there's a little bit of a vacuum in terms of like what is going to go there. If you come from Ruth, then you have in your head that the ancestor of David has been born. And so like it's kind of priming the pump a little bit.
Yeah, you feel things in the works. That's interesting. Yeah, if you're reading in the Jewish canon, literally the last verse that you have read in Judges is, in those days there was no king in Israel, and each person did what they thought to be right, which is that line you were raising a little bit ago. And if you read in the Christian canon, the last word is David, right? Obed, the father of Jesse, Jesse, the father of David. He became Jesse's father and David's grandfather.
He's
And
coming.
so
Yeah.
you have that anticipation. The other way that I think this sits differently in your tradition and mine, and I'm remembering this from a conversation that we had maybe last time we talked about this text, is in this story was actually a story I heard a lot growing up as a kid, because it's a story about a young boy who experiences a call from God, as we will see. And as I recall, you were saying not a story that gets talked about as much in your tradition because it's sort of
Yeah.
between the Torah and the Haftarah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how or whether this text lives in your lived tradition and whether that matters? I mean, it might not matter, but I'm curious.
Yeah, it's true. There is a lot of, especially in children's education, there is a lot of focus on the stories in the Torah, which is the first 5 books.
Right.
And, with maybe some major characters from prophets. This book falls in the category of prophets in our ordering of things. But it's just we don't talk as much as about the stories in this part of the canon. I think to our own detriment. I think it's a great story. It's just not, we read through the entire Torah every year during services, and then we go back and start again. And the way we read prophets is a little more, a little less methodical, a little less complete. So we don't pay as much attention to the story, but it's a really good one.
It's a good story. Christians, really love the narratives, as witnessed by the fact that the lectionary we're following is the narrative lectionary. And so when we're reading the Torah, we kind of skip Leviticus, half of Numbers, and most of Deuteronomy, and the end of Exodus,
and half of Exodus. Yeah.
So we gotta read something, and so we get into the narratives like this one. Amy, one of the things that I think is worth getting in our heads is that these early chapters of Samuel are set in Shiloh, in what is maybe a shrine or a temple in Shiloh. I kind of, in my head, I always want to transpose this story into the temple in Jerusalem. Can you just fill us in a little bit about why we're at a shrine in Shiloh?
Yeah, so this is before, historically, before there is one centralized place where all sort of offerings are made to God. And actually, that's something that largely comes with the kingship. David says, we should have one place in Jerusalem.
Right.
And that will be sort of, the idea is that that'll be a unifying thing for the people. But right now, we're sort of in between, as you're saying, this idea of the Mishkan that traveled around through the wilderness. We're not there anymore.
Right.
We can have more permanent locations, but it's not some incredible giant structure that is singular in its, magnificence and in its purpose. Yeah, we're in between.
The way that Deuteronomy talks about it is not you shall only worship me in Jerusalem, but you shall worship in the place that I cause my name to dwell, which seems in this period in the wilderness, as you're saying with the Mishkan, seems to mean wherever the Ark of the Covenant is, that's the place where you worship. And so right now the Ark of the Covenant is in the shrine in Shiloh. And so that's the place where you come to worship. And then David, of course, is going to bring the Ark to Jerusalem, and then Solomon's going to put it in the temple. And then those become sort of synonymous with the one place where worship is allowed. But in this period, it is wherever the Ark might be.
Yeah.
All right, Amy. So this story, as you said, is about Samuel. He is the miraculous child of Hannah, who dedicated him to the temple when he was just after he was weaned. So at the age of 2, maybe, she took him to Shiloh and gave him to Eli the priest. And he's been growing up there. I don't know exactly how old he is. Some time has passed in chapter 2. He's had some little brothers and sisters. And how old do you picture Samuel being in this text?
Okay, I just have to say the idea that you could just devote your 2-year-old to the church or the synagogue and be bye.
See,
I'm sure there are moments that would be very appealing.
Oh, I was thinking how sad that would be.
Also sad, but also 2-year-olds, come on.
Yeah.
How old do I, gosh, I guess I don't know. He seems kind of still young and innocent and very oriented towards whatever Eli wants him to do. So that has me picturing him as younger than 10 or younger than 12. 12, like
Yeah.
something on the young. I don't picture him really as like a teenager
Yeah.
yet.
That's exactly where I sort of place him in my mental picture, is between 10 and 12.
Yeah.
Somewhere right in that, like at the sort of the end of his childhood, properly speaking, and sort of
Yeah.
headed into the tween years or the young adult years in that era.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Amy. So let's start. There's a nice narrative that is in 3, 1 to 10. So we'll start there and then we'll read the rest of the chapter a little
Okay.
bit later. I'm reading in the Common English Bible. Now the boy Samuel was serving the Lord under Eli. The Lord's word was rare at that time, and visions weren't widely known. One day, Eli, whose eyes had grown so weak he was unable to see, was lying down in his room. God's lamp hadn't gone out yet, and Samuel was lying down in the Lord's temple where God's chest was. The Lord called to Samuel. "I'm here," he said. Samuel hurried to Eli and said, "I'm here, you called me." "I didn't call you," Eli replied. "Go lie down." So he did. Again the Lord called Samuel. So Samuel got up, went to Eli, and said, "I'm here, you called me?" "I didn't call, my son," Eli replied. "Go and lie down." Now Samuel didn't yet know the Lord, and the Lord's word hadn't yet been revealed to him. A third time the Lord called Samuel. He got up, went to Eli, and said, "I'm here, you called me?" Then Eli realized that it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So Eli said to Samuel, "Go and lie down. If he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down where he had been. Then the Lord came and stood there, calling just as before, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel said, "Speak, your servant is listening." Amy, this text starts with the statement that the visions of the Lord weren't widely known at that time.
Yeah.
I think that's such an interesting way to set the context. What thoughts did you have about that?
Yeah, my translation, the NJPS, has, "In those days, the word of God was rare. Prophecy was not widespread."
Oh, I like that.
And what I wrote is like, "And in our days." Like,
Yes.
I feel like often we're reading the biblical text and saying, like, why don't we have this kind of like clear prophecy? Like there's a yearning in modern times, I think, for this sense of like vision and prophecy that we encounter in the biblical text. So I don't know, just seeing in those days it was rare. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you. I'm here.
And especially when you think of this as coming on the heels of the book of Judges, where the people have kind of been doing what they thought was right in their own eyes. And then like either God has retreated in some way or God is not being paid attention to. We saw something similar actually in the Exodus 2, where the Israelites had been in slavery in Egypt for some time and they cried out, and it says God remembered the covenant, and then God's like, okay, I'm going to do something. So the text does seem to have these moments where God, I don't know exactly, is just not as obviously present, like drifts away or is not engaged.
That's interesting, because I didn't necessarily take it as a feeling that God had pulled back, but that something in the connection, like I was really interested in the fact that the text uses the word vision. The Hebrew says that, I think your translation also, mine said prophecy, but vision was not widespread.
Visions weren't widely known.
Visions weren't widely known. There was some way, the way that I understood it is there's some way in which the humans are not sensing, encountering, understanding a presence of God, which may or may not mean that it's farther away.
I like that ambiguity that you're raising there. Because I do think that there's instances in the biblical text where God seems to be more distant.
Yes, I agree.
And this could be one of them. But there's also what you're saying, which is there are also times when people are not paying proper attention. And this could be the case here also. And so I like that way, like something is misaligned in the connection between God and humans, and exactly where the issue lies maybe isn't clear. You get a little hint in verse 2 maybe when it says Eli, whose eyes had grown weak, so he was unable to see.
Yeah.
How did you read that line?
Well, one thing was that connection back to the vision word that they use in the first verse. The other thing it made me think of was Isaac, I'm
Yeah.
not totally sure. I mean, some of it is just like, you're aging and this is a natural part of the progression of many human bodies. But I don't know, especially in this time where I feel like there's so much attention in this story to the generations. I feel
Yeah.
like the idea that the older generation is losing some like physical capacity and also maybe some like connective leadership, religious capacity feels important.
Saying that he can't see right after that thing about the visions were not widely known, and
Yeah.
he's the seer
Yeah.
whose job it is to see the visions and talk about them. Like it feels that way to me too, that he's had a good run as the prophet, and now he's losing his, not only like getting old and enfeebled, but also losing his insight into what God is up to in some kind of way.
Would you call Eli a prophet? I think of him as a priest. Maybe there's no point in differentiating between them at this point.
That's a fair point. I mean, I was thinking the prophet in the sense of like, he has been the connection point between God and the people.
I think that's right. And so the vocabulary we use is kind of less important.
Yeah. I think you're right, though, that he's not his business card probably does not say prophet of the Lord. It probably says priest at Shiloh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the scene is set as Eli, he's lying down in his room.
Mm-hmm.
Samuel lying down in the temple near the ark.
Mm-hmm.
And the lamp of God hadn't gone out. Can you just help me with the significance of like where he is and what time it might be?
I mean, do you imagine that this is like basically like the Mishkan, the tabernacle has been set up at Shiloh, that's sort of our...
I think so. I don't know whether it's the tent itself or whether there's a structure there, but I think that's the idea.
But we assume the layout is
right.
Similar. Well, in that case, the ark is like the innermost sanctum where only, in Exodus it says only the high priest would go in there, only on the, holiest day of the year, and would wear something tied around his waist so they could pull him out. If like it's really, it's kind of a sweet and powerful image to think of a child just sleeping.
Yeah.
There. Within the Mishkan, there was a light that was lit during the night. So it was lit from evening until morning. So certainly this is telling us that it's overnight, but also I think it's telling us, since it says it had not yet gone, like it's still lit, that we're probably getting close to the morning hours. So it's like 4:00 in the morning. I don't know.
Yeah. I think in my past I have read this as like Samuel fell asleep before they turned the lights out for the night. You know what I mean? Like fell asleep watching TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's not that. He just is spending the night in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And he's just in there sleeping, and he's been sleeping there through the night, and then now he's waked up. I think that is so, I like the way you read that as like an image of like comfortability or like wanting to be in the presence of God.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because in just a second it says Samuel did not yet know the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean like had not had any direct experience of the Lord, but has like a sense of like closeness? Like I think maybe my kids are kind of like this right now. Like they don't quite know how to think about God, but they feel like God loves them.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how Samuel kind of is.
I love that idea that, we can be sort of raised in the teachings of God and with a like love and care, like the sense that God loves us. But that's different than having your own personal encounter with God. Certainly different than what Samuel is about to experience.
Yeah.
But it feels a little bit like a shift from a childlike relationship with God, where a lot of it is what you inherit from your teachers.
Yeah.
And you kind of like coast on that for a while, and then you start to develop your own understandings and experience. And because clearly like he's been living in the temple. He's sleeping next to the ark.
Yes.
He's choosing to do that.
Right.
But I don't know. I like the idea that relationship can be real and important and also can deepen and shift.
I like that a lot, Amy, that he's sort of living, he is doing what he does because he trusts in Eli's experience of God.
Oh, yeah.
He does not yet have his own direct experience, but he's been raised and he's sort of living that out. And then here comes the moment.
Mm.
So God calls to Samuel, and Samuel says, I'm here. And then Samuel goes to Eli and says, I'm here. You called me. Do you have a way of reading that?
I mean, I think that's what's so interesting here is that he says Hineni, but he doesn't know who he's talking to. Like, he doesn't know that it's God who he has. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a weird, maybe it like really is exactly that moment where your sort of primary orientation goes from your teacher or your parent to God's self. But like, I think it's fascinating that he says, I don't know, that word, that like, high vibration word is used here, and he doesn't know who he said it to.
Yeah. So Samuel goes to Eli the first time and says, here I am. And Eli's like, what are you talking about? Second time, here I am. What are you talking about? And so, it's kind of comical, I think. Do you think this is supposed to be like a funny story?
I mean, yeah, there definitely is a humorous element to it.
Like, you can kind of see this is like a Shakespeare comedy, right? Where, like you and I know what's happening because the text told us, but the characters in the play don't understand what's happening. So they're doing this
no, I think that's right. And God is just
forth.
waiting for them to figure it out.
Like, come on, guys. Yeah. The third time Eli figures it out, he realized that it was the Lord who was calling the boy. How do you, one of my questions is, why did it take him 3 times to figure it out? And my other question is, how did he figure it out on the third time? Is it just like Eli was a little slow on the uptake?
Or sleepy?
I
mean, like, you can picture your kid keep running into your room and being like, you called me. And you're like, I didn't call you.
Go back to bed, kid. Yeah.
Did not call you.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of how I picture it. It's that it's easy to imagine, certainly the first time that the child had just imagined something.
Yeah.
And then the second time should sort of pique your interest.
Yeah.
But how did he know the third time? I don't know. My text said, I don't know. It uses the verb to understand. He understood that God was calling the boy.
So whatever the reason, when Eli finally figures this out, what he does is he gives Samuel instructions. Okay, here's what you do the next time. Go and say your servant is listening. There's something really powerful there to me about Eli. He doesn't you could imagine going with Samuel and being like, let me talk to God for you. But he doesn't do that. He equips Samuel. What were your reflections on Eli in that little moment?
I love that point you just made, that he could have just gone and said, give me the phone. But it seems maybe like Eli understands that this is not, he can't do it. Like, this is my weird reflection from being a woman and raising a daughter, is that it's sort of like a child, like a adolescent getting their period for the first time and being like, okay, this is what you do, but you have to, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do it, and I can tell you how to do it, but you're going to have to take care of yourself. I can't do it for you.
I really like that, Amy. As a transition out of childhood into adulthood.
Yeah, that you you offer guidance and support through, but it's not just I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Amy, it's so interesting to me. We've been talking a lot about Hineni this season so far. And there's been a lot of Hinenis in this text that have not actually produced the thing that is desired. And then the thing that actually, Eli says to say, is speak,
Mhm.
your servant is listening,
Mm-hmm.
not here I am.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Mhm.
make anything of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think in my own mind, maybe I'm biased. I'm certainly biased. The reason that nothing happens after he says Hineni the first time is that he pops up out of bed and leaves. But it is really striking that, like, I feel like my instruction would have been, don't leave
Yeah,
when you hear Samuel.
Yeah.
When you hear your name called, stay and listen.
yeah.
But he gets very specific words to say. And it made me wonder a little bit whether Eli had had an experience like this personally, or this is just sort of what he figures you should do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here's how I've been reading it, and I don't know if this is a fair way to read it, is Samuel is very comfortable in God's presence. Like, he's sleeping next to the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And so the, like, I'm in your presence is kind of like expected and understood.
Mm.
But the invitation to, like, tell me something is what's new. And it's got me reflecting a little bit just like on myself and people of faith who become like really comfortable being in the church or being in the faith community. And like, here I am, but don't actually always think to listen to what God is actually saying, or maybe don't even want God to say anything at all.
Yeah.
And so maybe like that, here I am in front of the burning bush, like makes kind of sense in kind of one way.
Yeah.
But like maybe here I am when you're already in the sanctuary is not the thing that needs to be said, but the like, tell me something, God, I'm ready to listen.
Yeah. That's fast. I love that, Bobby, because I was thinking, yes, the burning bush, and also Abraham leaving home the first time in Genesis 12. Like that's the beginning.
In all those cases I can think of, it's the person is in a place where they don't think God is, and God's like, here I like, hello, like Moses, and then they say, here I am. Here the person is in a place where you kind of do expect God to be.
But that particular thing hasn't happened there before. So yeah, that's fascinating. I love that. Hi, y'all. It's Amy, one of your friendly co-hosts, and I want to tell you why Bible Worm is important to me. There's a Jewish tradition that Torah study is best done with a partner, a Hevruta we call it, someone who pushes you beyond where you would have gone on your own. Bobby was essentially my Hevruta for 10 years of grad school, and I've never found a thought partner quite like him. So when he asked if I wanted to read text together, there was no real thought process before I said yes. The decision to record this podcast the way we do was risky. We don't have a script. We don't pre-talk things. We are thinking together live. And it is my hope that precisely because of that, you feel invited to think along with us. Because everyone needs a Hevruta. And if you don't have one, I hope you will let us be yours. If this way of being in relationship to biblical text speaks to you the way it speaks to me, I hope you'll help sustain us through Patreon at whatever level makes sense for you. There are some nice perks if you need them. Liturgies, videos, monthly discussion groups. This year I've added some recordings of the chanting of these texts that you might hear in a synagogue. Or you can just support us to show your appreciation and help us know that this work matters. Thanks for listening and for supporting us however you can.
All right, Amy, in my childhood version of the story of Samuel, this is where we always stopped and we would say, look, you're a young person and God can call you the way that God called Samuel, which is true. Like, that's a good message.
That is a
to take from this story.
message. Mm-hmm.
We did not read the rest of this story when I was a child because it takes a little turn right here in verse 11.
Yeah.
The Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of all who hear it tingle. On that day I will bring to pass against Eli everything I said about his household, every last bit of it. I told him that I would punish his family forever because of the wrongdoing he knew about, how his sons were cursing God. But he wouldn't stop them. Because of that, I swore about Eli's household that his family's wrongdoing will never be reconciled by sacrifice or by offering. Samuel lay there until morning, then opened the doors of the Lord's house. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli, but Eli called Samuel, saying, "Samuel, my son." "I'm here," Samuel said. "What did he say to you?" Eli asked. "Don't hide anything from me. May God deal harshly with you, and worse still, if you hide from me a single word from everything he has said to you." So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. "He is the Lord," Eli said. "He will do as he pleases." So Samuel grew up, and the Lord was with him, not allowing any of his words to fail. All Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was trustworthy as the Lord's prophet. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh because the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh through the Lord's own word.
Mm.
So I want to just try to imagine Samuel's experience in the first part of this text where he's having this new, like, God is calling to me, speak, your servant is listening. And what God speaks to him is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to me a little bit about what you think is going on with Samuel in that moment?
Yeah, it is like such a poignant moment because as we pointed out in the first part of the story, he has this sense of like intimacy and closeness with God that allows him to sleep where he's sleeping. But it all has come through the human of Eli.
Yeah.
Eli has been his sort of go-to. And when God calls him, he assumes that it's Eli's voice.
Yeah.
So then to hear this God that he feels all this warmth towards, but maybe, hasn't had a direct experience, say that guy that you are so oriented towards is going to be punished forever. And,
Yeah.
like leadership is passing away from him.
Yeah.
I don't know, the translation, Samuel lay there until morning. Like I just picture what must have been in his mind and his body and his heart during that time. I mean, it says he's afraid to report the vision to Eli. So like that, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But also just to sit with the reality of that. Like you're a person who you have on such a pedestal.
Yeah.
God has just said, I'm taking the pedestal away.
Yeah.
That's hard. And it's a real moment in life. I mean, I think that happens to a lot of people at some point in life. The person that we thought could do no wrong clearly does wrong. And we have to recalibrate our understanding of the world.
I mean, it goes so quickly from being a moment of differentiation where Eli is really like Samuel's father, pretty much. Like from the age of 2 or so, he's been, really Samuel's only parent on a regular basis. It seems like Hannah and Elkanah come up once a year to visit on the festival, but otherwise, and we were talking about this as like a moment of differentiation, like, oh, Samuel's faith is going to become his own and not his father figure's. But it's not just differentiation. It is over and againstness, him coming into his own faith. Like the first thing is this sort of, prophecy against of the downfall of Eli and his family. It's interesting because the prophecy isn't Eli's a terrible person. Mm-mm. The prophecy is Eli's kids are terrible people, and he's not doing anything about it.
He didn't do enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which I'm just trying to feel. I do that thing that you always do that I laugh about, which is try to feel compassion for the person or empathy for the person.
That the text is not giving you compassion for.
But Eli's in such like they're his kids, like Phineas and Hophni, like they're doing some bad things, but they're his kids, and in some sense, I feel like good on you, man, because you're. I don't know, like you're supporting your children. Like, that's not great parenting to support your children while they're doing terrible things. But you kind of get why he hasn't wanted to be too harsh with his kids. But this prophecy is very clearly like your children are doing bad things and you need to stop. And because you stop them, but because you can't.
Because you can't. And this is not really the point. But I just, in Eli's defense, to defend the defenseless in this text, he says to his sons in chapter 2, why do you do these things? Don't.
That's true.
Stop.
Yeah.
But they don't stop. And he doesn't hold it himself accountable for their actions in this. Like he doesn't do enough.
So this text seems to be thinking like he needed to do whatever he needed to do to get them to stop.
Yeah, I guess so.
And he didn't go far
He
enough.
didn't.
Yeah. Amy, you're referring there back to chapter 2. And in that text, God has already sent a man of God, a prophet,
Yes.
to tell Eli kind of exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So why
Mm-hmm.
does God need to send Samuel?
Well, and does he even ask Samuel to do anything? He just tells him what's going to happen.
Oh, that's true.
Samuel seems to feel like he should tell Eli, and he doesn't want to tell Eli, but Eli insists that he tell him. But God doesn't ask Samuel to do anything.
So God's just filling Samuel in, basically. Like, here's what's about to happen.
Here's what's about to happen. It does feel like I would imagine it fundamentally like shifts the relationship and the sort of self-perception of Eli and Samuel, that like now Eli knows that Samuel has this direct connection that is real and true.
Yeah.
Maybe it's confirmation of the prophecy for Eli. I don't know if he needed that or not, but it's also establishing some direct communication between God and Samuel that it can't keep going through Eli, because Eli is going to be out of the picture.
I like that way of reading, if I understand what you're saying, that like Eli has known this for a long time, but he has not. He's been keeping it from Samuel. And so there's this like deep secret in the relationship.
Oh, that's interesting.
That has been kept from the boy. And so, because one of my questions is, why does Eli insist on Samuel telling him?
Mm-hmm.
Why does Eli insist on Samuel telling him what God said?
Insist and like move immediately to threats. I was like, Eli,
yeah.
Whoa, calm down.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if it's, maybe he thought it would be something else.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like Eli takes seriously that God said something to Samuel, and it is maybe weird to have that coming through this child you've been raising, where you feel like you're the one who's trying to be in charge and make decisions, and so you need to know whatever the message was, but the message is sort of you're not in charge anymore.
Yeah.
This just had me thinking, the fact that Eli already knew this and Samuel didn't know, and didn't know that Eli knew, it just makes me think about, I don't know, it just adds another layer of poignancy. Like Samuel wants to protect Eli from this information that Eli already knows and hasn't told Samuel, probably because he wants to protect Samuel from that information. And relationships are hard.
Yeah. Eli's response then, after Samuel tells them that he knows, is, he is the Lord. He will do as he pleases. What do you make of that response?
You know, I just want to say first that the translation, I don't like the translation in the NJPS here, but it says, Eli said, God will always do what is right.
Oh.
That's really not, I do not think that is what the Hebrew says. I mean, I guess I see in it some kind of like acceptance that it's not the same as Eli saying, I did wrong and I deserve this, but it is an acceptance that that is God's assessment of the situation, and that is what matters. Like a kind of resignation, maybe.
This is one of those moments where, I mean, I think that's right, as Eli is saying, is exactly that. Yep, God's going to do, like God's going to God, is one of my friends used to say.
Yeah.
Which is true. Like, I mean, there's a fine theological statement that he has made, and, you know, like, what's done is done. But we've seen throughout the Torah that God actually is open to the interventions of people, even after God has made decisions. And in fact, God gave Eli an eternal promise of the priesthood that God is now rescinding because of the things that his son did. So, like, God is... It is not the case that God simply does whatever God's going to do. Like, and that's the end of that. You know, it's God. There are interventions that are possible. And so I feel Eli, I mean, it's the same thing in chapter 2. Like, there were interventions he could have made, I think. He could have changed something, or at least he could have tried. And he weighed out the evidence, and it's just like, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm being harsh on
No,
Eli
that's
right
a
there,
really
but
interesting thought that he doesn't push hard enough on his sons, and he doesn't push back on God either.
like his sons are stealing the meat out of the offering pots. And so one of the things God's mad about is they're disrespecting
Mm-hmm.
God. And Eli's not willing to stand up for God over and against his sons. Like, you got to stop disrespecting. And so, I mean, Eli has sort of made his choice, I guess. I'm going to push hard, but I'm not willing to break relationship in order to protect God's honor or do what's right in the eyes of the Lord. And here he kind of says it again. God's going to do it.
It's interesting, Bobby. I just had this image of, I wonder how much Eli's sons were in the vicinity of the shrine when they were growing up. Like, because there's a way that sometimes, like, the children of rabbis or pastors or educators or whatever are in the space so often that there is a sense of familiarity that can get you in trouble a little bit with, the way that you treat some sacred rituals or sacred spaces, because you're there all the time. And so it is interesting to sort of contrast the way that Samuel's inhabiting that at this age, he's still young, and how it gets maybe some piece of that sort of familiarity and comfortableness gets twisted in his sons as they get older.
Amy, you just moved me a step beyond what I was trying to say earlier about Samuel being comfortable in the sanctuary, but not really yet knowing God. But bringing Phinehas and Hophni into that picture, now you've got 3 different sort of orientations to the sanctuary. You've got Samuel, who is comfortable there, but he hasn't really been experiencing God, hasn't been like hearing God's voice there yet until this text. You've got Eli there. I don't quite know what Eli's like. Eli knows that God is angry with him, but he's just continuing to like do his official role, I guess. But he's not really like doing the things that need to be done. And then you've got Phinehas and Hophni, who are connected to the sanctuary, and they're using it to disrespect God and abuse the people. And so you've got like the sanctuary can be used to exert power over. It can be used as a place of comfort that you sleep there, but you don't hear what's going on, or a place of just functionality, but not like being afraid to like intervene. And God's kind of disrupting all of that by saying, no, like be in the sanctuary, speak, your servant is listening, and then do right by what God has said to you, or something like that. The very end of this text, it seems like Samuel continues to live there in the shrine with Eli and Phinehas and Hophni. And so there's this sort of awkward, it reminds me a little bit of David living in Saul's house, like David and Saul and Jonathan all living in the place when God's stuff is about to happen. So there's this kind of like, the arrangement continues on for a while after the prophecy, but Samuel continues to be in God's presence, the text says. And it seems like the people began to trust him. I don't know. Like, I feel like the people haven't trusted anybody in a while. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if we read this book as coming after Judges. It's been a long time since the leadership was.
Yeah, since there was a leadership that in a meaningful way, that people really were bought into.
Do you do anything with the fact that there's a young priest in training who the people seem to find trustworthy, but they don't trust the official priests who are abusing their authority, and they don't trust the eldest generation who is unwilling to intervene. It just seems like there's something there that wants to get out, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, it's so I think you could read it as sort of like the world that's meant to be is on its way kind of thing. Like the next generation is already in place. Like even if Samuel can't quite take his place in leadership yet because he's young, that things are already in motion for that. I think that's more what this text is going for than my other thought, but that thought feels real also, so I'll just say it. It's a lot easier to trust in potential than to be in the messy reality of having humans in leadership roles when most humans are a disaster in one way or another. That's not really, I would not argue that that's what's about to happen with Samuel. You could argue
it does kind of happen with Samuel, though.
To some extent. I mean,
Samuel's a good guy and he's like a righteous person, but the people are like, hey, we want a king. And Samuel's like, you're going to get a king. And in his final speech, just like 9 chapters from now, he's saying like, I never did anything. Y'all think I did some wrong stuff, but I never did. So like when he becomes the official guy,
it's more complicated.
His relationship with the people gets messy. You're exactly right about that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really, there's this line at the end of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy you could translate it as like, today the world is born, or today the world is pregnant today is pregnant forever.
Whoa.
Yeah. Like depending whether you want Olam to be the world or Olam to be forever.
Oh, yeah.
Most people read it as today the world is born. But if you think about it as being pregnant forever, like on the one hand, it feels good to anticipate something, and like it can be infinite hopes and no doors are closed and you haven't done anything wrong and nothing is sullied. But also, if for people who have ever been pregnant or been close to a pregnant person, you know that you don't you don't want to be in the state of potentiality forever. But
yeah,
I don't know. There is a way in which we trust in something that is about to be more than we could possibly trust in something that is.
Yeah. That was so well said and also a little bit depressing.
Yeah. Don't worry,
But true.
Bobby. Neither of us have to be pregnant forever.
All right, Amy. Well, this text has a lot to it. And I'm curious, as you're reading this text and you are thinking about what it means to be a person of faith in the world today, what is this text speaking to you?
Oh my gosh. Really a lot of things. Here's the thing that I think I'll choose to grab onto for now. And it goes back to something you were just saying. Yeah, that we talked about just a moment ago about the different relationships that the different generations, the different people have to this sanctuary. And this question that is in my mind, especially as someone who educates children, is when does our comfort in sacred space facilitate a good relationship with God, a relationship with God that can be imbued with awe and wonder and respect and possibility? And when does comfort in a space almost stand in the way of that? Like, when are you so comfortable in a space that you think you know exactly what's going to happen and you don't hear the voice of God in that space, and you don't, it doesn't occur to you that like, maybe you shouldn't take meat from that sacrificial pot, like if you can get too comfortable. And I think that's a really challenging line to walk.
Yeah.
It's striking to me in this text that Samuel gets this frightening vision from God, and then he is afraid to tell Eli the vision.
Yeah.
And then Eli says, tell me the vision, and follows it up immediately with basically a threat.
Yeah.
And so it takes some fear to overcome the initial fear. There's a lot of fear, awe, however we want to translate that word. I think it's a little more fear in this situation. I'm not sure. Going into Samuel's experience here. And I think it's just making me question myself. I tend to go pretty far towards wanting to make children feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's checking me a little bit on that. Yes, comfort. Certainly, I don't want them to feel afraid, but I do want them to be able to feel awe.
Yeah.
And that might mean not ice skating across the floor in their socks all the time, like only during certain times. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I want to hear your own reflection in the text, although I also selfishly want to hear how you think about that balance yourself. But you can tell me that offline if you want to.
No, I love that. And I don't think God minds children ice skating across the floor in their socks.
Thank God.
And I think comfort is good, but there is a comfort that leads to the perpetration of injustice out of that comfort, which is kind of what Phineas and Hophni are doing. Like abusing people because of the authority that they have, and they're comfortable abusing it for whatever reason. Like Phineas and Hophni are like, they're just jerks. I'm just as glad that they're going to get overthrown. Eli to me is a more complicated figure because he seems to have mostly done the right thing. And he raised his kids in the sanctuary, and, Samuel is comfortable and feels close to God. Like, he's done some things that are right. But this prophecy is about him and his family. Like, he's being threatened not because of things he did, but because of situations in which he did not intervene. And that hits closer to home for me. And it brings me to that difference between I'm here and speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And it's when the I'm here-ness gets in the way of speak to me. To me, that's the line of comfort. When you're so comfortable, you don't want God to actually say anything. And when God says something, you don't want to disrupt the comfort in order to do something about it. And that's the situation that Eli has ended up in. And that's the situation that God speaks into. And that's the situation that Samuel now is aware of. And you could imagine a world in which Samuel kept that to himself and didn't stir the pot, so to speak. One of the things I really appreciate about Eli in this text is he is the older generation sort of facilitating his own punishment. He's raising the younger generation. He's helping Samuel with that question, speak. He is insisting that he say what his vision has been and let that become part of the reality of the community, even though it ultimately means that he's coming in for critique, and his generation and the generation behind him are going to experience their own disruption. Now, anyway, there's a lot in there about comfort and speaking and about generational transitions, and that beauty of the respect between the oldest generation in this text and the youngest generation in this text. And it kind of skips that generation in the middle towards something new that inevitably involves a disruption of the old. And it feels like we're sort of in a similar, maybe humans are always in such a situation, but it seems like in the world today, and also in the faith communities that I'm a part of, we are very much in a situation in which we got comfortable with some things, and now that's going to get disrupted. And so there is a trusting of the younger generation that's going to have to come, and facilitating the disruption of the old. And, it's not comfortable, but it's what this text is pointing me to.
Yeah, it's making me go back to the first question you asked, I think. How old do we think Samuel is? And that moment when you're sort of moving from childhood into more independence. And it's a beautiful story. I see why your experience with it as a child stopped halfway through.
Yeah. Then it's just you can have a relationship with God too.
Woohoo! Please don't overthrow us.
That is a good message.
That is a good message.
Please don't overthrow us. All right, Amy. Next week, we're going to be in 1 Samuel 16, where we're going to see the actual anointing of David as king by Samuel, which raises a whole other set of complications. But
Doesn't everything?
Everything raises complications.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
Thanks for this conversation, Amy. I'm looking forward to talking about that one with you next time.
Me too. Have a great week. I'll see you then.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us next week as we read the story of Samuel anointing David as told in 1 Samuel 16, 1-13 and Psalm 51, 10-14. Until then, keep on digging.